guys, it's Chloe and welcome back to my channel. But today I'm going to take you through the process of getting my new hearing aids and how I did it. So I'm super excited to get into this video, and on that note, we're going to get started. So this video is going to be whacked down into 2, maybe 3 videos. So the first video, which is what you're going to see today, is going to consist of finding my audiologist, questions I asked her, funding sources, and then the second video is going to be what I actually went with. I'll show you guys what it comes with and what it looks like, and also just the features of it. And I also got some assistive tech too, and also a comparison between my old and my new hearing aids. So the first thing you want to do is check and be sure that a hearing test is covered under insurance. And you may be thinking, Chloe, what about hearing aids? I'll get into that in a second. But you want to be sure a test is covered. And there are a couple different ways you can do it. So number 1 is you can check your health insurance patient portal and look up a hearing test and see if it's covered. Number 2 is there's a hotline on the back of your health insurance card. You can drop them a line and give them a call and see if it's covered. And number 3 is you can also do a Google search of just like audiologists in your area and look at their reviews, and also reach out to other people, whether it be face-to-face or support groups, stuff of the like. Just see who's good. And what you can do is you can give them a call or look on their website and see if they take your exact insurance. And keep in mind, just because a facility takes your insurance doesn't mean that the doctor will. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, there are some health insurances that do not cover a hearing test, and that's not okay. However, this just means that you can practically go see whoever you want, which you still can regardless of insurance. If you are not tied down to that, then you have more free reign versus someone that has to, have insurance cover it because they can't afford it. My hearing test was like $50 to $60. I don't know if Georgia Medicaid covers a hearing test for adults, but I just ended up seeing someone that wasn't in network, and I'll get into that in a second. Now we're going to get into the hearing aid, and this is something that's going to be on its own soapbox of its own, but the number 1 question I get asked by people, are hearing aids covered by health insurance? The short answer is no, and the long answer is it's complicated. The thing is that most private insurances do not cover hearing aids. And if so, if you're one of the very lucky few that happens to have hearing aids covered by your insurance, they may either cover some of it and make you cough up some of the cost, or they'll cover all of it. And it also factors in like deductibles, if you've met your deductible, blah, blah, blah. Original Medicare does not cover them, because what happened is there are a bunch of clinicians that are a part of these like hearing aid advocacy groups, and they went head to head with Original Medicare to try to get them covered, because the majority of people on Medicare are elderly people, and elderly people wear hearing aids. Original Medicare came back and said, no, we're not going to cover them. Instead, we're going to provide over-the-counter hearing aids, which are hearing aids that you could just literally like walk into a store, buy a pair, and leave. And that's its whole soapbox on its own. And if you want to hear my hot take on that, feel free to yeet something down in the comments and I can do a hot take on that. So Medicare Advantage plans, some of them cover hearing aids, but I haven't used a Medicare Advantage plan, so I don't know how good they are, and it just depends on the plan. Typically, though, with those Advantage plans, they only cover the hearing aids themselves. They do not cover any wax filters or batteries. Now, Medicaid. So I know in Georgia, as well as some other states, they have a law that states that everything for kids has to be covered from birth to 21 years of age, whether it's hearing aids or if you need a blood draw or physical therapy, regardless of what it is, it's covered. And then once you turn into an adult, states can pick and choose what's covered. And some states choose to extend their hearing aid coverage, and some do not. And Georgia is not one of those states that covers hearing aids under Medicaid. And I'm not sure about the Veterans Administration, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did cover it. So you may need to look into that. Funding options. So if you are one of the millions of people that does not have hearing aid coverage, I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to say you're screwed, because there, at least in my state, there aren't that many funding options available. And the only funding option is vocational rehab. However, you either A, have to work with them with the ultimate goal being employment, or B, you already have to have a job and you may be at risk of losing it because you can't hear very well and need hearing aids. With my state, they'll cover them. However, it depends on how much money you make, and that'll determine what they cover versus how much you have to cough up. And they will only cover the aids themselves. They will not cover wax filters or batteries. What I ended up doing was I ended up Googling and I found an audiologist with really good reviews, but they didn't take Medicaid for the hearing test. But to be honest, it was only like $50 to $60 for the test. And it's not like I get it done like every week or every month. I get it done once a year. And I felt comfortable paying the $50 to $60. And number two is I felt comfortable because hearing aids aren't covered by insurance anyways. But if they were covered by my Medicaid, then I would try to find somebody that's in network. But at this point, they were really good. And I had some bad audiologists in the past and haven't had a good experience yet. So I just wanted a good experience. So I went in there and it was really cool because the person working up front had a hearing loss herself. And I love seeing disabled people getting jobs, but more importantly, disabled people getting jobs that align with their disability. So she had a hearing loss and working for an audiology clinic. Love to see it. And I went back. The woman was fantastic. I could not have asked for anything better. And basically, I got my hearing tested, and I don't have a copy of the results with me, but it's a reverse slope hearing loss, meaning I struggle to hear male voices. And another thing is that my right ear is moderately severe, if you still believe in that category. Some audiologists choose not to use it, some do, whatever. I know my past audiologist used the moderately severe category, and that's where my right ear is. And then my left ear is just moderate. But again, if we don't believe in the moderately severe category, then both of them are moderate. So after the test, I went back into my audiologist's office and I gave her a breakdown of my hearing loss. And basically, I had a mild hearing loss in one of my ears, and that was detected at 1.5. And then my 3rd or 4th grade year, it ended up being a moderate hearing loss in both ears. And it's been that way ever since. And then when they added the moderately severe category, my right ear fell into that category. So for starters, my first pair of hearing aids were a pair of Signia Inseal Primaxes, and they were in the canal, no Bluetooth. I did not like them because they were in the shop more than they were in my ears, because they don't do wax filters and I get a lot of wax buildup. So that was just a no-no. And with my second pair, let me show you guys. I'm going to pull them out right now. I have a pair of Resound Lynx Quattros. They look like little quotation marks or commas, whatever you want. And this little like wire on the outside is the Bluetooth. And I will mention with both of those hearing aids, they're battery operated. And they took the same batteries. So that made it a lot easier when I went to go switch over to the Resounds. And I went with Resound because I didn't like Signia, and that's the only other brand that my audiologist at the time worked with. So I did that. And then we talked about rechargeable versus non-rechargeable hearing aids. So I'm going to get into the non-rechargeable first. But non-rechargeables have batteries, and they may or may not look like this, and they may be bigger than this. This is the smallest size that one could have for a hearing aid battery. The other sizes are bigger. So again, it'll be bigger than this. But they're in this type of packaging, regardless of what brand you go with, because of something called Ava's Law. But basically, what ended up happening is parents were being lazy and they weren't putting batteries in a safe and secure place. So kids were eating the batteries, and therefore they had to go to the emergency room and get their stomachs pumped out or something similar. And a lot of emergency room departments were not happy with that. So what ended up happening was one day ate one of these batteries, and then the mom or whoever it was decided to make a law that batteries had to be in this type of packaging. And it ended up winning. So now in all 50 states, they have to be in this type of packaging. And this packaging could be really hard for someone with fine motor skills issues to open. And also, these batteries last for pretty much a week. And then afterwards, you have to replace them. Batteries, again, are not covered by insurances or Medicaid or vocational rehab, at least in my state. So you'd have to pay for these out of pocket, and they are not cheap. Like, I went on Amazon and I think I got a pack of, so it came with, so there are 6 in each. I had to cut some of them out for my hearing aid, but there are 6. And I got 6 of these for like $14, and they only last a week. And if you think about it, I don't just have like all of them in the box. I have some in my purse, some in a backpack, some may have some in their car or whatever. So yeah, these are not gonna, I feel to me that these just, are expensive and not really worth it in my opinion, which leads me to my next point, but chargeable hearing aids. So with that, they last all day, and the only thing you have to do is put them in the charger at night. And then by the next morning, they'll be ready for you to use. And now, wax filters. I'm going to keep this short because there's not a lot to it, but regardless of what kind of hearing aids you get, you will need wax filters. Those are not covered by insurance. Let me show you what they look like. So I've used some of them in here, so there may be some empty slots, so disregard that. But I also paid $14. There's roughly, I think, 8 in a pack, and I got 8 of these sleeves, and that was $14. Now, those you only change when they're dirty, stuff like. So there's that. And again, regardless of what kind of hearing aids you get, you're going to need those anyways. However, with my audiologist and some of audiologists too, as long as your hearing aids are in warranty, you can get batteries and wax filters at no cost. So what I also did as far as research is I looked up hearing aid manufacturers and the hearing aids that they had and did some research into that. I also, at this point, I was asking my audiologist a lot of questions like what I just mentioned before, batteries versus rechargeable, which is better, behind the ear, in the canal, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a blank template, and you can, view it. It'll be in my, there's a link that I'll put below that will allow you to access my Google Drive, and it'll be yeeted in there. But basically, you can write down any questions that you have for the audiologist, stuff of the like, regardless if it pertains to your hearing loss or just hearing aids in general. And I asked her the questions because these hearing aids are an investment, and I want to be sure, because I'm on, government assistance, we'll call it that. And I know that down the line, I may not be able to afford a pair of hearing aids. So I wanted to be sure I could get the most I could out of these aids. And we also started talking about the different brands of hearing aids, and I had done some research, but I ended up going with something completely different, and that is, tune in next week to find out, because that's going to be in part 2 of the video. So I thank you guys so much for watching this video and cannot wait to see you guys again soon. Bye.